Oh, what a lovely welcome.
Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you for having me. It's actually my second time here.
Yes, last time you were interviewing...
Yeah, I was in your seat interviewing the lovely Marc Jacobs. So I'm really glad to be here. Thank you.
Let's start with a nice big question.
Yes.
Can you briefly outline your career and in the fashion industry and how you've got to where you are today?
Well, I'm very old. Let's just start there. Sort of the late 80s. I was 16 years old, studying at Kingsway College in London. I didn't know anything about fashion. I mean, my mum made clothes, so I would help her make clothes, but that was all I knew about fashion. I didn't think it was a career. I didn't, I come from a very strict sort of African family. So, you had to be a lawyer. All the lawyers here, congratulations, because that's what my dad really wanted. One day I was stopped by a stylist called Simon Foxton to model. And then he introduced me to a magazine called ID Magazine, where I would sort of intern while I was at school. While I was at college, I would sort of intern while modeling, just trying to do everything, at the age of 16. And then when I was 18, I was made fashion director, where I was like a one-man army, where I would style the covers, I would write the features, I would do the shopping pages. I mean, literally do everything. In a way, I realized that was probably for the good groundwork for what I'm doing today. So from ID, I sort of became a freelance stylist while still working for ID. I was contributing editor for Japan Vogue. I had a long stretch working at Italian Vogue from sort of 96 to like 2010 or something as a contributing editor, where I'd work with Steven Meisel, the really great photographer. Then from there, I went to American Vogue for 7 years, where I worked with Anna Wintour. Then I was creative director at W Magazine, and then I ended up at British Vogue. Don't let anyone tell you it's, when you see people in a role, you always think they just got there, but there's always so much work behind it. And I've been doing this for 30-something years, and I still don't feel like I've quite got the handle of it. So that's the journey, briefly.
And you mentioned that your mother sewed clothes with you.
Yes.
How do you think your upbringing influenced your decision to go into fashion? Did that play into your creative process now?
Yeah, I mean, I always say, even though I grew up in England and London, I lived in an African household where every day I'd see sort of different colors, there were different smells, different foods. And then I'd go to school and I'd be, I'd go with my friends in my uniform, eating chips in bread, chip butter, whatever they call it. So you kind of straddle two worlds. And that's really what's sort of inspired me, even more, as much as the dressmaking, knowing how to make clothes. The idea of duality is really what's important in my job. I can put myself in other people's shoes, and I'm going to come back to another word I always use, which is I had empathy because I was the other. I wasn't your normal English boy. I was from another country. I was an immigrant. So having that outsider's perspective more than anything really is what my work is about, or makes it what it is.
And now you're at British Vogue.
And now I'm at British Vogue.
Did you have a goal when you became editor-in-chief?
Look, Vogue is sort of the greatest magazine in the world. The history, the culture behind it. When I got the job, all I wanted to do really was to bring Vogue back to the Vogue I knew growing up in the 70s, which was about all kinds of women. Women of different races, different classes, different sexualities, different sizes. I wanted everybody to sort of be welcome within those pages. I wanted Vogue to be a home. I remember when I took the job and talked to some friends of mine, and they felt sometimes excluded. And for me to be able to work on such a brilliant title and embrace people who normally thought, oh, Vogue is not for us, was a real great thing, I don't know, for me to to want to tackle. And I remember they were saying things like, oh, diversity, diversity doesn't sell. Non-white models on covers don't sell. Covers had to be a certain way. Stare at the camera, smile. For me, it was about breaking all those rules. And, we broke them and, to great success. But I really wanted to give the magazine to, everybody out there while still retaining the sort of the level, the Vogue level.
And how do you decide which risks to take in your editorials when you're breaking those rules? What's your creative process?
I mean, first of all, no man is an island. I have the best team in the world. I always say, a multitude of voices is better than a singular one. So I really trust my team. They all invested in the vision of British Vogue. Sometimes they call me out for not thinking something through or whatever. So we have the usual, we brainstorms, but they come from the same place. We're all on the same trajectory. We all believe in the same things. We all believe in equality. We all believe in empathy. We all believe in, sort of using our voices to, in a small way, make the world a better place. So I have a great team, and yeah, you can't do it on your own.
And could you give us some insight into the creative process behind the February cover?
The January cover, which one was that?
The one that you've just released, right?
Oh, that one. I've always, for me, it was quite a simple thing. I've been around, like I said, I've been around for a long time. And I remember there was a moment where we had all these Brazilian models, and it was a Brazilian wave. And then we had all these Dutch models, and it was a Dutch wave. And we had, the Russian models. And I just thought, oh my God, all the girls sort of at the forefront of editorial and shows and campaigns are essentially African models. And this hasn't happened probably since the days of Saint Laurent back in the 70s or 80s. So it was just a celebration of these incredible models, and to sort of create an image that was sort of very artistic and also very high fashion. So we had fun doing that.
Do you think the criticism that you've had has been fair, or? Criticism?
I mean, not a day goes by that I don't get criticized. For me, it's all noise. It's all noise. When I see young women coming up to me on the street to say, thank you for a cover, or a woman who's plus size saying, I see myself. I always say, if you can see it, you can be it. So for me, those people are more important than noise. And noise is great for magazines. Everyone says magazines are dying, right? And magazines can still create a noise. So it's all good.
And outside of fashion, where do you turn for inspiration?
On the streets. Oh my God, I'm obsessed with street fashion, films, art. For me, and inspiration can come from anywhere. I don't really block anything out, but I do watch a lot of films. And what do I always say to my team? To put a magazine together, I always think of reflection, projection, documentation. Right? So reflection, that's sort of, looking back through history and sort of reflecting it forward. Projection means what's to come. What can I give the reader who hasn't seen this before? And documentation, of course, this is what I love most. This is what the world we live in today. So I always have, it's almost like child's play when I put a magazine together. I always have those three sort of points in mind, really.
Well, when you moved to Vogue Italia, you said that you moved from a London stylist to a grown-up stylist. Yeah. What did you mean by that?
Well, I grew up in the 90s. We sort of, myself and my generation sort of invented grunge, if you wanted to say. The Face magazine ID, Kate Moss. And in London, grunge was very much about, that one piece of clothing. So you'd obsess over one jacket for weeks. And you shoot that jacket over 6 weeks to tell a story, or a pair of jeans or whatever. So it was very much sort of grounded in minimalism. So I remember, getting a job with Italian Vogue with the great Steven Meisel, one of the greatest fashion photographers ever lived. And I was very cocky Londoner, very young, I knew better than him. And I remember the first look was essentially, a pair of hipster jeans and a white shirt. And he loved it. And then I thought, okay, now I'm going to mix it up. Another pair of hipster jeans and a white shirt. But this time the sleeve was long and sort of rolled up. And I remember Steven looking at me going, can you do anything else? And from that moment, he became sort of the best teacher. You know, a year from that time, there were hats, there were furs, there were jewelry, you know, so Italian Vogue really sort of made me mature as a stylist. But it also taught me even more about a narrative, a fashion narrative, telling a story with images. Because let's face it, you know, people think fashion is frivolous, but fashion can change the world we live in, you know? Fashion can reflect the society we live in. For me, like Nina Simone said, we have to reflect the times we live in, and so that's always on my mind, you know.
And there's been an increased emphasis on diversity
Yes.
in British Vogue and now in the wider fashion industry.
Yes.
How do you see that influencing the future of creative industries in general?
I think it's really great that everyone's sort of embraced diversity. And moving forward, I feel like the landscape has changed, hopefully permanently. But the problem I have is, you know, when people put a little image, a little square image on their Instagram, or when people, you know, use models in their campaigns, it's great, but that's just the beginning. To really have a company that speaks to everybody, you need people behind the scenes. You need people of color, you need women, you need, you know, different, I don't know, people of different sizes to be behind the scenes, you know, to really make progress happen. Being performative is fine, but we need proper progress. So I feel like with diversity now, people are really taking it very seriously and employing people behind the scenes. So that's what I'm really sort of very keen to keep pushing, you know.
And you see that progress happening now?
Yes, I see it happening, but for me, it's never enough. For me, we have to keep pushing. We have to keep making the world a better place, you know. And that's what we do with Vogue every month. We don't sit back and say, oh, we've had, you know, 3 covers of, you know, non-white, whatever you want to call it. We still keep pushing. And, you know, there's a page in the magazine that I love called the Viewpoint pages, and you know, my editors will tell I'm obsessed with those pages. And it's just women telling their stories, whether it's about growing up in Northern Ireland, whether it's, you know, talking about sort of abortion, just heavy subjects that Vogue wasn't supposed to tackle. But I feel like the beauty now is the magazine can now speak of, you know, all topics that women care about. So that's really a proud moment.
And Vogue has been seen to become a bit more political since you became editor-in-chief. Could you talk about what you think the responsibility for creatives is in the wider sort of cultural, social, political conversation we're having at the moment?
I go back to saying that, you know, an artist or art has to reflect the times we live in. And I don't even see it as political. I just see it as what is surrounding the world, issues in the world, you know. Of course, we're still the best at photography, we're still the best at fashion, and putting that together, putting, you know, what's happening culturally with what we do best. For me, that's what makes Vogue the best magazine in the world. So I don't go in thinking it has to be political or it has to, it's just what is a zeitgeist? What do people care about in the world? What should we highlight? But always through the Vogue lens, always elevated.
And you've been pushing for more representation in fashion since the early days of your career. Do you have any advice for anyone here who's trying to do the same in their own industries?
Be fearless, always question, don't just take everything at face value, be inquisitive, you know, try and find out about other cultures, try and find out about, you know, other people, just don't stop learning. I think when people in my position sit back and think, oh, I've done it, that comes before a fall. And what pushes me is, I'm gonna be very honest, my insecurities and my, you know, the fact that I want to learn. You know, I want to learn from, you know, you here. I want to learn from my friends. I want to learn from society at large. So always be curious, always. Never lose that.
And you spoke out very powerfully in 2020 about your experiences of being racially profiled at work. Have those experiences changed the way that you approach your work, or?
I always say thank God for those experiences, because those experiences keep me level. Those experiences keep me who I am. Those experiences make me realize that we still have work to do. Because look, if it can happen to me, it can happen to anybody, but I'm in a position to do something about it. And so it's almost like those things happen always a blessing. When they happen are a blessing. So it just makes you want to keep going. You know, I don't stop.
And what's your inspiration as an editor?
My inspiration as in...
Is it, so when you became an editor of I suppose, editor-in-chief of British Vogue, did your sources of inspiration change from when you were a stylist and looking at just the fashion?
Well, I guess, yeah. I mean, it's two disciplines, isn't it? When you're a stylist, you really care about the image, you care about your clothes, you're telling the story through one channel. But as an editor, you have to oversee everything. So I went from being obsessed with one item of clothing to just being like, okay, how does this fit in the mix? So you almost have you're on top, having a view of everything, and then you need incredible soldiers. So styling was always about me, and it was so personal. But now I can sit back and go, okay, this is not to my taste, but it kind of appeals to a certain audience. For me, it's all about audience. You know, when we talk about, it's not just a magazine. When we talk about audience, I talk about sort of digital, because for me, you can't talk about one without the other. You know, in the old days when you shot a cover as a stylist, it was, okay, what is that image? But now, what is the video? What is the audio component? What is the event? So that's how my job has changed from being just a stylist. It's just having this huge sort of a huge playing field. You know, for instance, if I'm, say, shooting Beyonce and I get a message saying, oh, she'll do the pictures, but no interview, for me, it's not good enough. But in the old days, that would have been it. It was all about the picture and the image.
As I said in your introduction, you've increased digital readership at Vogue by 51%. Yes. Was that a goal that you had sort of for commercial success, or something that you wanted to do to change the creative landscape? I
think it was just, you know, sort of, I knew initially that, you know, there's a whole new generation who would approach the magazine first through digital. You know, not everybody buys magazines, but I just knew that we had to also have a digital platform that appealed to all ages. So for me, it wasn't something that was so hard to think about. It was just like you couldn't just deal with print. And, you know, now when we want things to, you know, sort of amplify, the digital platform is amazing. Millions of people read it every month. I mean, I just got a note from the girl in charge of my digital. We hit 7 million in January. You know, these are incredible numbers that you can't recreate with print. But at the same time, print acts as the haute couture, if you say, the most incredible, beautiful thing we can produce. And that sort of powers everything, I should say, really.
And you replaced Alexandra Schulman when you joined British Vogue. She is sort of an icon in her own right. Was that difficult coming and stepping into her shoes, or do you think...
Alex is a great editor. She did such a great job. I just knew that she had an amazing point of view in her time, and also I had to bring in my point of view in my time. So, yeah, she really, you know, created a great magazine, and I'm glad I was able to sort of inherit it and still keep it, you know, at the level that it deserves to be.
You've spoken a lot about your team and your soldiers. What do you look for in collaborators?
It pretty much goes back to what I look for in, is, you know, again, a sense of adventure and a sense of questioning and, you know, everything I said before, really. You know, I just can't, I can't deal with people who are not curious about the world, you know, and people who can also challenge, you know, not be scared to sort of challenge when they feel a decision's not right. At the end of the day, it's my decision, but I also love to hear what other people have to say. I think that's what really, as an editor, that's the one thing you must possess, being able to listen to everybody and through that sort of make your decisions.
And what's the best piece of advice you've received in your career?
Oh my God, that's a tough question. What's the best piece of advice I've got? Oh my God, I'm just gonna think. Never rest on your laurels. This sounds like a very old-fashioned sentence, but never rest on your laurels. Always keep going. Always keep moving. Always, you know, always keep questioning, really. But never rest on your laurels is one that I always go back to, even in interviews. You know?
Well, thank you. I'm keen to make time for audience questions. So if you have a question, just raise your hand, and we'll have a Seki coming around with a mic. Yes, the member just over there with the, I think, black sleeve.
This question is on behalf of my sister, who I told. about your visit today, and she has two questions. The first is, she's just asking for advice on how to stand out in the fashion industry, and her second question is, what are your predictions for fashion in 2022?
How to stand out? How to stand out? I mean, again, it goes back to the same. I always go back to the same facts. Do not lessen yourself. Do not let people say you can't. You know, for every show you don't get into, for every knockback you have, you just have to be able to stand up. You know, the fashion industry is not the easiest of industries when you're starting. I remember not having any money for years, staying on my parents' floors, returning clothes, walking, not having enough money to even get a bus. But it was something that was, if you're destined to do it, you will do it and you will stand out with your determination, you know, with your determination, definitely. So just be determined and don't let people tell you otherwise, is really all I can say.
And your predictions for fashion in 2022?
Oh my God, you should ask my editors.
by the next issue.
I always go back to the same old one. I always go, you know, I believe, look, I could give you all the trends coming out of my ears, but I always believe individuality will always win. A personal sense of how to dress, a personal sense, what is fashion to you will always trump everything else, I think. And then you have, like, this season we did black, we did all that, but I believe in personal style. You know, the Kate Moss personal style, you know, some of the best people have a sense of style that they hone over the years. So I really believe in that, rather than saying this or that or this or that.
Do you have a favorite personal style, somebody that you've worked with?
As well?
Do you have a favorite personal style, somebody that you've worked with?
Well, I always go back to Kate because we kind of grew up together from when she was a little baby model. When we met as models, I think she was 14, I was 16. To seeing her evolve through the 90s, you know, sort of the minimalist, to being sort of a mother, sort of Glastonbury, you know. But I love her. I love, you know, so many people I work with. I love Rihanna's sense of style. I love Beyonce's sense. So many women, almost Zendaya, everybody I put on the cover is because they have a certain style that I love, you know, Gaga, Adele. So basically, just you look back at the covers, British Vogue covers, those are the people I find sort of very inspiring and stylish.
And a question from a member in the colourful jacket.
Hello, my name is Mark.
Hello.
And the question I wanted to ask, you mentioned meeting young girls who are fans of Vogue and readers of Vogue. And I wanted to ask you, what is the most moving or inspiring interaction you've ever had with a Vogue reader in your career?
Oh, wow. To be honest, you know, I'm so lucky it happens every day. It happened tonight when I was with all these incredible students, and it just always fills me with so much happiness, all of them just saying thank you. And, you know, just like being on a train. And the reason why I do this is not for the accolades. It's to see real women seeing themselves in the magazine, or people who've been othered seeing themselves in the magazine. So, you know, every day I do get someone sort of coming up to say thank you, and it makes me a better editor. I want to say thank you for even taking that minute, taking the time to read. It's like, how dare I? Who do I think I am? But taking the time to read something with creative, for me, it's so humbling. So it's not really about somebody coming up to me, but it's like me thanking them for, you know, supporting this vision, which really could have gone left when I started, you know?
We'll take a question from the member at the end on the front bench, yeah. And then from the member just at the back there afterwards. So here first.
Hi.
Hello.
So you said that part of how you choose what to include in Vogue and what to talk about was about reflecting the world, but Vogue has such a massive reach that it also plays a massive part in shaping the conversation, and sometimes your covers are a bit provocative, or they like challenge narratives of what people think. and they've provoked reactions. So like quite recently, like the Billie Eilish cover sparked this huge debate about, does it matter what women wear and what does it mean about their sexuality? Is there a certain reaction you're looking for when you think about how you're doing these covers and like some of your edgier stuff? Is there something you're looking for, or is it just...
So am I looking for a certain reaction?
Is there a certain reaction you're looking for when you put out these covers that can be quite provocative?
No, I think to think of reaction before creation will end. Like say for Billie, it was a cover, and I spoke to her, and she wanted to sort of wear corsets, and so I kind of help her navigate that. Reaction happens anyway, but you can't start off by thinking, I need this reaction, because then you won't really create anything that connects with people. I think, but one thing I will say is I'm not scared of bad reactions. I'm not scared of conversation. I'm quite fearless in that way. But if I feel something is innately right and of the zeitgeist, even if it's unpopular, I'll still sort of get behind it. So it's more that way of thinking than wanting to create like shock or anything. But I think it's important that magazines create conversation, about all these issues. Look at what happened last year. We were in lockdown. All my staff was scattered all around London. We were told that, oh my God, if you're over the age of 60, basically your life is in danger. What did we do? We put Judi Dench on the cover just to show the beauty of age. And then I remember a few months later, we were all at home, not knowing what was going to happen, not knowing what year we were going to have because of lockdown. And I look out my window and I'll see the nurses and my postman and the shopkeepers. And I thought, you know what? This is the moment to really have essential workers on the cover, because these people are literally putting their lives on the line for us. And then, there was a second, I thought we need a break. So we did a series of 14 landscape covers so you could at least take a deep breath. And then, of course, George Floyd happened and the covers were activists. So what I'm trying to say is fashion has to act as a document of our time, more than shock. It has to be a document. So when you look back in, I don't know, say 10, 20 years, you'll see the year that we had. You look at Judi Dench, you look at the activists, and it'll be a document of the time. So that's more important to me than shock or anything, really. I hope that's okay.
Hi, wonderful speech, by the way. Thank you very, very much. I'm also kind of a middleman here, which is kind of funny. I'm asking for a first year LCF. Shout out Petra Mellington. But I wanted to ask, what would you say to a small designer, particularly a small designer, an independent designer who wants to know what they should be thinking about now in the early days to succeed, and going forward, what you would consider to be important for small designers? Thank you.
I mean, I'll say, never lose your creativity. What's happened over the past sort of year or two that I love in terms of young designers, I come from a generation where it was all about the show, wasn't it? The big fashion show, the massive cast of models. And young designers somehow, couldn't fit into that fold. Young designers, some of the most creative people I've met. Everything I talked about relates to a lot of young designers I know, always questioning, sort of not having enough funds, but sort of working, so hard. And what happened that was so interesting the past year is we couldn't go anywhere. We couldn't go to fashion shows. So we thought, let's pivot to video, right? So everybody starts making sort of videos to sort of, show their collections. And then we come out of lockdown and realize, oh my God, now the playing field has leveled a bit, because if you're a young designer, you don't have the pressure to have that show. You could just have a video. You could get some friends together and put something together, whether it's on Instagram, so let's not forget social media. Young designers, use social media, use it. I didn't have it in my time. My time, you had to wait for someone to spot you in a magazine. You have social media, so you have to be really fearless, approach people, leave me messages, DM people, do all that, because you have that at your fingertips. And then hopefully somebody will see, somebody will tell somebody, and that's how careers are made. So use whatever's at your fingertips. Really.
Could you talk to us a bit about what you think the impact of social media has been on fashion?
I mean, fashion has become, it's really changed fashion. Sometimes for the better, for me, I say our front cover is really social media. When we launch it on Instagram, my God, the conversations it creates, but I just also feel that sometimes there needs to be people curating. There's a lot of noise. And in my time, we could go in and narrow down what we wanted. So I think when you look at social media, you can't take everything as, the be-all and end-all. You have to question still. And I know it's hard. Well, most of you have grown up with it, right? So, but you have to still question it, and you have to still take what you need from it, and the rest just becomes noise, really. It's a great tool of communication too, isn't it? I heard from some young photographers and stylists that now they don't even need agents because people just book them directly through social media. So they're the good sides and the bad sides, people's mental health. What can I say?
Do you think that's an approach that British Vogue would take in the future, sort of cutting out the agents and recruiting people directly from social media?
We were doing that before, there were lots of interns and you could come in and go, but we knew that, sort of interns across all magazines were working so hard and not really sort of police. So now, we have sort of strict guidelines. You come in, you get paid. So I'm very proud about that. And also we kind of go outside of sort of the normal scouting area. We go to sort of inner cities and schools where people aren't so privileged and sort of try to create what we talk about, a diverse staff.
We'll go for the member in the pink coat and then the member just on the front in the brown coat after that.
Hello, I'm Kapi. And my question is, how do you deal with, as a creative, not allowing the commercial pressures get to you? How do you avoid the business that is fashion from...
I know what you mean.
Yeah, from basically pushing the direction you go, because it is a big industry. Yeah. It is a big economy itself. And as I'm Nigerian, when are we going to get a Vogue Africa?
Oh, this is tough. Look, it's all about art and commerce, right? There's a structure, there's a staff, so you have to keep all that going. You have to keep advertising going. But I still believe that what we do at British Vogue and at Vogue is we do it with integrity. We're still able to sort of have a whole commercial side and not sacrifice the creativity. You can never do that. So, the balance is not always the easiest, I tell you. Sometimes I'll look at an issue and go, my God, it's gone too far down an unrelatable route, and I will change it in the last minute. I will change it a week before deadline. And then other times I'm like, oh my God, it's sort of very commercial, so let's mix it up. So, and that's the beauty of the job, sort of always straddling art and commerce, as I call it. And that's for Africa Vogue. Watch this space.
Hello. Thank you very much for speaking to us today. My question, follow up to your question, is a little bit the opposite direction about the business of fashion. A bunch of us MBAs here started a luxury retail club in the business school here, and we think it's about time that fashion as a business taken seriously at the business industry. A bunch of us also have experience from like a banker career, finance career, and then 5 to 10 years of career trying to pivot into a luxury industry and fashion industry. Do you have any advice to us, like mid-career transitioning into fashion?
What's your advice for people who are interested in the business of fashion, especially people who've maybe had experience in just business, transferring into the fashion industry?
Yeah. Oh, I mean, to a business of fashion, I mean, there's a magazine about, you have to sort of, again, are we talking about people who are working already or sort of young students?
So this is a question from, I think, one of the sort of Masters of Business students. So we'll be probably working already and then come back to be a student again.
Just think of like-minded people. Think of people who you admire, whose vision you want to be a part of. Like I said, you can't separate art from commerce. You can't just say, I'm going to work for this business person and that's it. You have to know what a brand means. Are they sustainable? Are they inclusive? Once you know that, then you can make your decisions about the business side. Before, the business was here, the industry was here, but the best businesses now are the ones who speak to each other. Where the CEO, look at Gucci, Marco, the businessman and the designer go hand in hand. At British Vogue, my publisher, I wouldn't be able to work without my publisher. So look for companies that sort of fester that kind of a relationship, and you can't go wrong. Yeah.
Any more questions? A question from the member in the sort of furry sleeve on the front row, and then we'll take a question from this member here at the back afterwards.
I have one very quick question and then a slightly longer one. The quick one is, who are you wearing?
Oh, well, no, it's not so exciting, I'm afraid. I always wear, I always wear British, so I'll always wear Burberry and I'll always wear McQueen. I think this is probably, I also wear Prada a lot, but I do mix it up because, this is Mr. Porter and this is Prada and my shirt is the Gap. So I practice what I preach. I don't do head to toe anything. And the boots are Saint Laurent. So yeah, it's the stylist in me. I can't just wear one thing. Always has to, even though I look the same, I always look like I'm dressed in all black or trust me, every day I do think about it. Even if it doesn't look like it.
And my slightly longer question is, how long after a movement or a trend in fashion has passed do you need to name it? Because it seems to me that fashion is compared to other art forms, an incredibly immediate environment. After Marc Jacobs got fired from Perry Ellis, you had Susie Menkes immediately calling grunge ghastly. And it's she's naming it immediately in her review. And I guess how long do you need insofar as power dressing in the 80s, minimalism in the 90s, porn chic in the noughties, what ism are we living through right now if we can name it?
Okay. So it's...
How long you need to identify...
To name a trend and name a movement.
To name the trends that we're in right now, and what ism do you think we're living through now?
Oh, I see grunge and Y2K. I guess you have to wait a minute for a decade to sort of define what it is, When you're living in the moment, it feels like it's very cyclical, isn't it? Trend after trend after trend after trend, but you need a little time. I was stuck in terms of decades and half decades somehow to really distill what happened in a period of time. So I don't think there's a specific time, but I think it's easier to think in terms of decades. Free love in the 70s, power dressing in the 80s, grunge in the 90s. You need a little time because as you're there, it's just life, isn't it? You're just living life and changing clothes and trends. So you need a little time, maybe a decade, I'll always say.
And the member with the white trousers and the furry sleeves. If you just stand, then yeah.
These are really great questions, by the way.
You've had a really incredible career and you've used your platform to give so many different types of people, space to share their experiences. And for that, I think we're all very grateful. But my question was more, when do you know that it's time to leave and kind of take up a new opportunity? So moving from W to British Vogue or even from Vogue Italia, when do you know that it's time to go?
When do you know that it's time to leave and take up a new opportunity and move from one publication to another?
I think when you've overstayed your welcome at a party. It's that simple. When you've overstayed your welcome. When you're no longer inspired. When you're just phoning it in, as they say. And, I'm not there yet. And I feel like when that happens, it's your duty to leave. I always say Vogue is bigger than any editor. It's been here before me, and it will still, exist and survive when I leave. But while there, you're the custodian. You have to give it the voice, you have to shape it. And then when your time comes, it's like, heave ho, get out.
And when you're working at Vogue, do you think about sort of setting it up for the next editor and that form of custodianship, or are you focused on your vision and your story?
It's like going into battle. You're focused every day on doing what you do. But like I said, when the day comes when you're no longer inspired, then you have to leave. There's no overstaying welcomes, because the reader will also see that you're bored so it's not really about setting up, it's just about being in the moment. I believe in living in the moment, and in that moment doing the best possible work you can, and not resting, and just keep it going.
And the member just at the back over here.
Thanks.
Hello.
Hi. So the fashion industry is known as being one of the biggest polluters.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to know, there's been a lot of obviously shops like Boohoo or Shein, and I just wanted to know what you think Vogue's role in trying to promote sustainable fashion and trying to stop all of this kind of exploitation and wastage and damage to the environment is.
I love that question. I'm so happy that one question, aside from inclusivity and sort of togetherness, the industry is now talking about sustainability. I think everybody realizes fashion's a polluter. The issue last January was, a sustainable issue. We featured designers from all over the world who don't even advertise, you probably haven't even heard of, but who are working to make our world a better place. So we take that very, 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 very seriously. We also work with sort of Prince Charles and his whole team, sort of dealing with sustainability. We're really questioning, how to be carbon neutral. These are conversations we're having every day, and I promise we will keep having. I'm not saying I'm an expert on it, but we really, really cannot leave the world the way it is. We have to do better. And my slogan is always, buy better, buy less. Buy things that last, things that you can pass on, better and less. So that's what we preach at the magazine, and that's what we'll keep doing.
We have time for just one or two more questions. Is that a press question on the front bench there in the white shirt, or a member's question? Perfect, then take that question.
Hello.
Hello.
At the first glance, fashion might appear superficial in the sense that it refers to external appearance, but I still believe that fashion has a great power in the sense that it can shape our inner identity. Mm-hmm. So I was wondering, what is your view on the power of fashion from an individual perspective?
Yeah.
So fashion can sometimes be seen as quite superficial, but yes, obviously has power to shape somebody's identity. So what's your view on that?
Fashion not only shapes personal identity, but it also changes society. Like I said, you can tell so much through images, through words. You can change society, and I believe fashion still does that. Fashion still has a place. Fashion can talk. The reason why I'm here, is fashion has been able to talk about size, about race, about religion, about age. We have to tackle the topics of today more than ever. And I think anybody who thinks fashion is, just frivolous and, it helps society so much. Apart from the personal, being your armor, it tackles so many problems, and will continue to, especially now, where we are now. It's our responsibility.
Well, that's a perfect message to end on. I'll finish with one more question.
Already? We're done?
No. I'll finish with one more question we've been asking all of our speakers, which is, if you could give one thing for all of our members to take away and think about this week, what should it be?
One thing about, like I said, be fearless. Because once, I remember when I first got the job at British Vogue, and I thought, I could do a copy of the magazine that's existed before. Or I could do something I really believed in, right? Had I not been fearless, And I remember saying to my team, you know, if I get fired, at least I'll get fired for something I believe in. How horrible it is to get fired for something you don't believe in. So, you know, always, you know, just be fearless and just question. Never stop questioning. Never stop asking why. When you go into an institution and they say to you, we've always done things this way, you can't, you just go, why? Simple, simple. 3 letters. Why can't we try this? Why is it always this way? So why, for me, always have that in the back of your mind.
Well, Edward, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
It's been a pleasure.
No, real pleasure. Thank you so much.